All right. Well, good evening, guys. Thanks for showing up. This actually is my buddy Jake Volin. We graduated the academy together. We spent our first 2 years in Squadron 27 together. And if I can pull this up, I wanted to have a little treat and show this that I found.
Oh, I actually have no idea what it's going to be.
Can you see the screen?
Oh, nice.
The Dooley picture? There's Jake right there. There's big linebacker freshman Blake right there. That's our starting squad. So that was me and Jake's introduction right there. Good times. All right. Well, Jake. So Jake started in college. I think was Jake. Correct me if I'm wrong, but junior year underwriting deals. Got in the Michael Blanc mastermind and started being a underwriting consultant for that team, and then graduated to another firm. Started underwriting with them. Got up to 500 units that he helped acquire, and now he's doing independent underwriting consultation and still underwriting a bunch of deals while doing pilot training in San Antonio. He's trying to fly heavies, right? What are you trying to fly?
Something big. We'll see.
Something big. There you go. All right. Well, Jake, I'll let you take it over and give a little background, and we can jump into the underwriting thing. Got some more people I'm gonna add in here too as we go.
Okay. Yeah, I'll keep my intro pretty quick. So, like Blake said, we've known each other for 4 years now. We've been kind of going along this real estate journey together. I am by no means, I'm kind of like the classic one of those guys who it's like, uh, he has 500 units, right? But I have 10,000 units, and I've got, I have a very tiny slice of a big pie, and I'm, very thankful for that slice. It's a different way of doing things. I kind of earned my slice of those pies through sweat equity and underwriting deals for these private equity groups. I kind of found that as a younger person, like 23, the only way that I was able to add value to these groups, since I had no money, was through underwriting their deals for them. I found that surprisingly, a lot of these bigger companies did not have systems in place, and they kind of were underwriting these gigantic deals, like 10, $20 million deals, like back in the napkin, which was pretty surprising to me. And so I didn't think it at the time, but I was able to add a good bit of value just by having a decent idea of how the numbers worked. And I got my start with Michael Blanc's mastermind. I started like on just being a paid member of it. I ended up eventually getting taken on the team, providing feedback to the community, and then I kind of just ended up subcontracting out to different private equity groups and underwriting deals that they were working on. So I've had a super interesting ride. I've really enjoyed it, but I'm by no means, like an expert, but I'm happy to share the little bit that I can to people who want to listen. So happy to help.
Well, cool, man. Thanks for giving a little background so everybody's kind of familiar with you. So tonight we are gonna underwrite a 56 unit deal that I was looking at in the Huntsville area, but realized that when the broker sent it to me, he kind of password protected it against my email, so no one else can open it, and Jake can open it. So instead, we're gonna look at one in San Antonio, a 12 unit that he's looking at right now. So I guess we'll just get into it, Jake. Take it away, man. Show us the magic.
So I'll have to share my screen. So a little bit of background on this. Here, I'll go ahead and share it. So a little bit of background on this deal. Let me know which screen. Can you see? You guys can all see this?
Through the browser, yeah, where your mouse is at.
Okay, cool. So uh, I wasn't planning. We literally just found out that we're going to do this. So I don't know. In my opinion, and this is kind of how I got my start. I think a lot of people start looking for properties on LoopNet. It's like a great way to kind of rapidly fill up your kind of view of what kind of deals are out there. It's no secret. These are absolute for the most part, bottom of the barrel deals. So
Yeah.
I would never outright recommend anyone buy a deal off LoopNet. Unless,
Logan and I were talking about this last night. That's like all the brokers that just get like bad. It's like a retail deal, hitting when it hits LoopNet. So it's usually these brokers have relationships with investors and give like the pocket listings or the best listings to their list of investors. But sometimes you'll have that owner who's like, I want to sell it for 5 million, and the broker's like, well, it's worth 2 million, so we'll put it on LoopNet. So that's kind of not always what we're dealing with, but kind of.
yeah. By the way, I don't know the level of detail. If I'm, too broad or too close, just let me know. So, anyways, I live in San Antonio. I figured the best way for me to kind of show you how I would go about underwriting a deal would be just in a market that I'm in and know. So I guess I'll just go ahead and get started. So this is going to be, it's going to be obviously different for everyone, but this is kind of how I go about it. And one thing I want to preface really quickly also before we get started is LoopNet is, if we had more time, the way that I would prefer to do this would be to go to like CBRE. Any larger deal, independent of your ability if you can close a deal that size or not, those deals are really well marketed and they have a ton of information available. You just have to put in your email. You can download the OM, you can download the rent roll, the T12, all of the marketing information. It's readily available. And they'll send it out to anyone who will give them their email. And maybe the deal's too large for you to take down. It's something that maybe is not in your wheelhouse yet, but or you're even interested in being, in buying a deal that size, it still is a good place to start. So that's where I would normally do it, but because we're on a crunch, this is where we'll go. So what I'll do is I'll go to San Antonio. I found a deal, a quick one. It was the first one that I saw that was multifamily. It's right here. It's a $1.2 million deal located on 1712 North Olive Street in San Antonio. So what I'll go ahead and do is kind of look at it on a map and just kind of get my bearings. So obviously, you never want to invest in a market you don't know, right? So you should be able to kind of get your bearings pretty quickly. This property happens to be just down the street from the Pearl in San Antonio, which is a super nice little part of downtown that's been kind of turned into a central hub for weekend activities, and you can go out and sit on the see if we can see it on satellite.
And
It's
that's
like
some background. Like generally, San Antonio is a pretty hot market right now, right? Like you're
yeah,
there and seeing the growth and kind of growing trends in that market.
yeah. So I don't have any. I'll just like I said, I don't own any real estate in San Antonio. I just live here, so I know that I'm kind of learning the market. But yeah, I would say that, if you just sit, it's kind of like the Uber experiment, right? If you're in the back of an Uber and you're talking to the driver and the driver, mentions something kind of off the cuff about how rapidly the city's changing or how quickly things have been growing, that's probably a good indication that maybe it's something worth looking into. But again, I've lived here for just under a year. And so even in a year, I've kind of noticed that, uh, the real estate market seems to be kind of, it seems to be getting slightly hotter. But again, it's hard to know like what's different between that and like the rest of the country, just because we've been in this extended growth period. So anyways, moving on. What I noticed is that it's in a good part of town. Or at least it's located near a good part of town. So I ended up going actually earlier this week. I just went and drove it quickly. I kind of, I just literally drove down the street. I drove up this alley right here into the back. I took a look at the two properties. I hadn't even looked at the OM yet. I just was kind of driving and looking around. And one of the things that I noticed up front was this building looked a lot nicer. These two buildings did not look as nice. And anyways, because I'd already taken a look at the property, the LoopNet listing, I kind of knew a little bit about it. So it's got all the information right here. You guys can look at it on your own. But what it does have is an OM, which is nice. And clearly it's marketed well. Not every OM is going to look like this. And I know you can't read everything as I scroll through, but It's got a lot of different information, but the main information, or the main thing I want to point out, is that all these pictures are from the renovated building. And these two guys haven't gotten that yet. So, and then they have, the OM, so the broker's pro forma. They don't have a T12 in here. I actually reached out to the brokers and I got a rent roll from them, but it has a whole bunch of uh, personal information on it that I don't think is worth sharing out right now. But I have it on the side, and we'll put that information in the spreadsheet once we look at it. But it's pretty like basic pro forma. It's got pictures, it's got location, it's got demographic trends, and it's got a broker pro forma, and that's important because this is how the deal is valued. They're selling it at a 5 cap. So the first thing, whenever I see a cap rate, the first thing that I want, an advertised cap rate, the first thing I want to know is what is that 5% based off of? So what is that, what is that number based off of? So in this case, we'll figure out what it is. We'll figure out what it's based off of in a minute. But this is the closest thing I could find to a T12. So it turns out they don't have a profit and loss statement from the last year, at least one that's readily available. I reached out to the brokers and got a rent roll, but they don't have a T12. So if you look at their T12, the one that's on LoopNet, this is why I like going to CBRE, because this doesn't really give you much to work with. You don't know what the breakdown of their expenses are. You know that they've got some taxes and some expenses, but you don't really get much from it. So most of the numbers that we're going to get are going to be from the broker pro forma, and then from our own experience in the market. So the way that I'll get started underwriting this deal is I will download the spreadsheet. So I have a spreadsheet that is available for sale, but what I like to do is I like to go to the download link to make sure that I get a clear copy every time, just because this spreadsheet is exactly how it opens up. It comes with all of the formulas and stuff. This spreadsheet is completely customizable. And so what happens if you use the same spreadsheet deal to deal is some of the things that you start to add in on different deals as you underwrite start to kind of dilute the effectiveness. So I just like to start from scratch each time.
And
So
I've used this too. Like, this is what I use to analyze my multifamily now, and like a lot of the spreadsheets are just very complicated and take like an hour to get through, even to do something light to put all this in. And Jake's been doing this long enough. He just created his own that kind of streamlines it and walks you through the basic stuff, but then also you can dive as deep as you need to in it. So I'm excited to actually show it on here because it makes my life so much easier.
sweet.
Jake, you don't use the syndicated deal analyzer, or do you use
So,
that later?
so I helped build the syndicated deal analyzer. You're talking about Michael's product.
Yeah, I bought it. I joined the deal desk for a while back.
And Charlie. That's the one I was using before too, and it was taking me a long time to underwrite deals. Like even just quickly, like going through the scenarios tab and into the returns to kind of adjust things.
I use my own, but I think on a bigger deal, I would want to use something a little more professional.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I started on the syndicated deal analyzer. I'm a big proponent of when you start as soon as you start involving other people's money, you now have a responsibility, in my opinion, to make sure that your numbers are not just back of the napkin. It seems like from what I've seen, a lot of companies, syndications and private equity groups, these guys are so well connected and they have such unique access to deal flow that they don't really have an issue with being able to buy deals without needing to really, obviously they underwrite them to the standard of the bank and everything gets mostly taken care of. But a lot of their investors are not, essentially, they're not worried about the quality of deal that they're buying. And you can look at that many different ways, but the reality is for most investors, if you're willing to put, struggle through it, it's your money. You can do whatever you want. But as soon as you start, bringing in other people's money, it's probably a good idea to get something a little bit more professionally made.
Yeah.
So, anyways, independent of all that, let's just go through and kind of throw these numbers in because I want to show you what the process is. So we got, they're offering at $100,000 a unit. This is just about everything that we.
Jake, do you got the spreadsheet up right now?
Oh, can you not see it?
I can't.
Can you guys see the spreadsheet?
I see.
I can see it.
Okay.
Huh. We'll continue.
Like you're the odd man out, dude. Sorry. So, okay. All right. Shoot. Where was I? So, okay. So that's basically everything you put in on the dashboard. So the way that the spreadsheet works is I basically work left to right, and the first 2 pages are where most of the inputs go in, and then it kind of gets progressively less as we work through. If you do have experience with the SDA, maybe some of it will. I mean, it's a different model, but in process, it's fairly similar. So you throw in basic information on the property, and now we move to our financial analysis. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll put this over here and then open up the OM on this side. So what we'll do is we basically, we'll put in the T12 numbers. We'll do it quickly and we'll try and be quick about it. So we got 97,860. Then they've got 48,93 in vacancy, which is 5%. And then they've got 11,723 in taxes. And then their operating expenses, their general operating expenses are 2,905, which I'll just put in the insurance column because there's not a general expenses. It checks. All right, cool. So we got our T12 put in. I'll go ahead and throw in the OM numbers. So this, you can use either one. My guess is that this 5%, I know the answer, but what I'll say is that my guess, just normally looking at the OM, is that the brokers are going to price the property based off of the most aggressive pro forma. So I'll just throw in the fully renovated pro forma. So that's 124,200, and then they have a vacancy of 6210. And then what I'll do is I'll put in the taxes in a minute, but because they kind of break down the fully renovated, I'll just put it in the number right now for sake of time. So 51,481. So that's our OM. And that's what our OM number is, right? So we have now an NOI of 66,509. So if we look at that, they were advertising at a 5 cap. Let's see what they came up with. Okay, so in this case, if you look at the fully renovated number that they came up with, the NOI is 66,509. If you look at it based off a 5 cap purchase price or a 5 cap purchase valuation, it comes out to 1.3. If you do that 5.03, that's where from the LoopNet, that's where that 1.2 million valuation comes from. So it turns out that the valuation actually comes from their current operations and not the projected broker pro forma. How accurate that is, well, we can see, but we can see that they're trying to value it fairly. And that's when I talked to the broker, that's what he kind of mentioned their intent was.
That's shocking.
Yeah, I know. It's you don't see it like this usually, but there's kind of always, they're salesmen, so there's more to it, which there is more to it in this case.
And this is where correct me if I'm wrong, Jake, but you'd want to know like the market cap rate. Like it could be a 6, but they're saying it's a 5 to boost it, like going off the most aggressive cap rate rather than the most aggressive NOI.
I think cap rates are not as important as they're not as important in the initial analysis as people think they are. You need to have an idea for the market, what a fair cap is. It's just like good to have a general idea, but that kind of comes from just being active in a market. But when people are like, yeah, I won't buy a property in this market for any more or less than this number, it's kind of arbitrary and nebulous, and I don't know if it's a good mark. Anyways, okay, so one of the one of the things that they brought up in the OM was their unit rent. So right now they're operating at a $650 per month on average. That's what the rent roll comes out to. And then their whole pitch is that we can bring it to $850. We can raise rents $200 if you just renovate the remaining units. Realistically, what they're currently operating at is, if you wanted to do, we can do it a little more accurately, because there are 8 units that have not been unrenovated. So we'll call these the unrenovated and then renovated. So we got 4 units that are renovated that are renting for $850 right now, and then we have 8 total that are not renovated yet. So what that puts it out, what we can look at right there. Oh, and then another piece of information before I get ahead of myself is now we have an idea of how much money we can actually generate just from rent increases alone. Typically, that's where a lot of the value add comes from, is just from raising rents, but it's not always enough to just raise rents. So, and you can't just, go in and raise rents, the $200 in 1 year. It takes time to schedule that. So the way that I like to incorporate that scheduling, that increase into a pro forma is over a period of time, while you still grow the base model of the rent that the premium is added to. So, it's a 12-unit property. It probably only takes a year to, less than a year to turn it. And between each unit being renovated, you would be able to replace the tenant, hopefully. So in my eyes, you could increase and add these rent premiums over 2 years. You could do it over 1 year, in my opinion, but if you want to be conservative, you do one of them 1 year and you do another one the other. So you add it in, you schedule it over 2 years. And what you can do is you can take this number, this gross income from the rent roll analysis. The spreadsheet will automatically calculate in the rent premium increase. You can throw in your economic losses, which I'll just put in a blanket 10%. It's just what I like to use on this size property. You could even go up to 15 on this size property, because if you have one unit out of 12, I think it's 91% vacant. Yeah, if you have 1 unit go vacant out of 12, it's 91%. So you're already at basically 10% with 1 unit vacant. So between 10 and 15 on a property this size, and maybe on a larger property, you can go, between 8, 10, 12% if you want to be really conservative. Depending on the asset class and market, you could potentially be less conservative. It just is market dependent. But for San Antonio, I think 10% economic losses make sense. And that would be spread out across, vacancy, loss to lease, bad debt expense, etc. So we won't put in any other income or utilities right now. And then this is kind of where I'm going to start building up our expense profile. And, this is another example of not really knowing what the market is like, but kind of leveraging my experience. And this just comes from underwriting a lot of deals. The way that I would augment my lack of knowledge in this area, because this is super important, knowing what the expenses are going to look like on a property, is getting a second look from the property manager. I'm going to have a third-party property manager, and I tell them, hey, I'm thinking about buying this deal. Would you be interested in managing it? If they say yes, they should. You tell them, hey, I'd be interested in thinking how you think you could operate this property. For the most part, they'll almost always give you an idea, and you know that it's going to be conservative because they probably want to underpromise and overdeliver. But they can give you a good idea into what to expect. So what I will do is I'll use the taxes from here. Eventually, you'll want to do a deeper analysis of the taxes. We could do maybe $350 a unit for insurance. We could do, these are just kind of ballpark. We'll do $500 a unit for contract services, and that will be spread across. I think, if I remember correctly, now maybe is a good time to kind of go to the OM and kind of cross-reference and make sure we're not we're not doing anything out of whack, but I think we should be at fairly decent proximity to where we should be close to the truth. Um, the management fee is probably going to be 8% for a property of this size. I'm going to put what could I do? Maybe 1,000. Maybe we'll do $400 for repairs and maintenance because a property like this, typically your property manager will be hesitant to just rapidly repair things, but then the turnover expense is going to be what really gets you when people move out. There's a good chance they didn't take good care of the units, and unless unless you like keep checking in and make sure that they are taking good care of units, you're probably going to have to turn. You're going to have a significant turnover cost. We will do for utilities. We'll do $150 with the goal of eventually billing back utilities to their to the renters. Excuse me. Okay, and then we'll do $275 for replacement reserve. A property of this size is probably not going to have a significant payroll. Normally, this would be a salary for an on-site manager or something, but you're not going to have an on-site manager for a property of this size. There are other considerations that might go into payroll, but I just honestly don't know. And what I don't like to do is just kind of randomly assign thousands and thousands of dollars into the property just because it feels better having it there. I'd rather kind of know what the money's going to, and if it doesn't need to be there, probably it's probably okay to leave it. General and admin, I'll put a flat 2,500 just based off of kind of legal fees and certain marketing that needs to get done will cost another, call it $4,000. So this is kind of just like, I kind of spitballed it, and it's definitely not accurate. It's not something that you would want to take to a broker if you want to get taken seriously, but it's just something to kind of get the ball rolling. You can use certain yearly expenses per unit multiplied by the unit count to kind of get these figures out. And if you guys have heard of like the 50% rule, if you can get your expenses close to 50%, then you're probably in the ballpark. Maybe your income will be higher or lower. Maybe your expenses will be higher or lower. It's most likely going to be a wash, and you're not going to get more specific underwriting until you contact someone who's a professional in that market. So at this point, what I would do, but I'm not going to just for sake of time, is I would fill out the OM column of this. I would try and get an idea from the property manager. And eventually what's going to happen is you're going to kind of create a triangle of numbers, of NOIs. You're going to have, a really high number from the broker's pro forma. You're going to have a number from the T12. You're going to have a number from your property manager. Somewhere in the middle of those numbers is where the truth is going to sit. If that's where you're going to find the actual operations are going to, play out. And that's what you want to model this column, this offer basis off of. And as you move closer and further along the deal, if you decide it's worth pursuing, this is the column you want to start to fine tune. But for now, we'll just go ahead and assume that this is fairly accurate. So we're projecting about $15,000 less than where the broker thinks it's going to go at the end of the first, down the road. But we're gonna add value to this property somehow because we're higher than the current T12. We're also gonna have higher expenses than both the current operations and the broker pro forma. So our NOI ends up being significantly lower. We can fix this, and we will fix this.
Hey Jake, can we touch on something right there? I think it was like an important takeaway. So you're getting feedback and data from different sources, right? And then you want to kind of, as you were saying, take the conservative approach based on what those numbers tell you. So they're going to point you to like a general direction. And when you're building your offer price, obviously you want to be conservative because you're, thinking about either one, putting in your money or two, bringing in investors' money. And you certainly want to be conservative there. So that's a good point for that offer column, is to just make sure your expenses are, not overzealous and that you're not overshooting the barrel here.
Yeah, conservative, but you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot or else you'll never get a deal. So it's about being precise. I don't like this site. This concept is kind of bothered me from the beginning. Is people are like, yeah, I'm just going to put it in just to, just because I want to be conservative. And I think that level of it's not precise enough to be. You might as well not underwrite that same amount at all, because
Yeah, it's a fine balance, because it's going to be hard to underwrite one and like find a 30% return. You're going to have to find a good return and find it accurately. So that's a good point.
It's about being precise, and in order to be precise, you have to hit the same market. You have to know people in the market. It's not this is not a one-man band. You cannot take down these deals on their own. I don't, you hear people saying, I owned, it's always a team effort. And if you want to underwrite deals, quickly, you got to have kind of, as you can see, it helps to kind of know general rules of thumb and the only way you're going to get those is by having a good team, people in the corner. So, what I would do after all of this. Okay, so the one thing I don't like, and I've kind of quickly gone over it. I don't like that our NOI is so much lower than the T12, but it's hard to know if this T12 is even accurate because they're only saying it's $2,700 per unit per year, which is very low, and there's no way that's accurate. It's absolutely more than that, and it's probably more like it's closer to 4,000, between 4,000 and 5,000 a unit. If you don't want to be running a slumlord. A slum, right? If you want to be a slumlord. If you want to be giving your tenants a good place to live and giving them a nice place to live, you're not going to be spending like $2,000 in expenses a year. It's that simple. So I don't like that we're so much lower though. But already it's indicative that maybe there's something to look into. So this is our sources and uses tab, and basically, I found that it was easier to look at what the cost of a deal is going to look like and how much money it's going to take to get into this deal by breaking it down according to sources and uses. And this is how all of your institutional lenders are, any institutional investor, and all of the lenders are going to look at it as a form of sources and uses. So is everyone here familiar with sources and uses? Okay, so I'll just give a quick overview. So basically, both of these columns are going to equal each other, and you have your capital stack, right? How much debt and how much equity goes into a deal, and that is determined based off of you have a purchase price, you have closing costs, and then you have capital expenditures. Those are the three costs that go into closing the deal. Obviously, it's never going to be just as much as the property cost, right? There's always going to be those tacked on things. And if you don't account for them, they can add up, and it can really, really hurt your returns if you're not careful about how you analyze your closing costs and stuff. It seems insignificant because it's only like 1%, 2 or 3% of the total purchase price. It can take double digits off of your internal rate of return or your equity. It's worth covering. A lot of people don't. So I'll just leave in the kind of rules of thumb that we have right here. You'd obviously want to go to your state-specific value to know what the title transfers, all those percentages are going to be, and then it'll calculate based off the purchase price. And then one of the benefits of the spreadsheet is a lot of these things are tied to percentages, which are attached to the purchase price, which is going to help make fine-tuning that purchase price easy because everything's going to be tied to that fixed value. So that's why you'll see so many percentages. Another thing that I don't know if I mentioned is everything that's blue on the sheet is what you're supposed to edit. So these are these cells that you're supposed to override. I'm not sure I did mention that, but that's why I was only editing the blue. Okay, cool. So those are the sources and uses. It breaks down the project cost, the capital stack, and then what is the actual breakdown of your equity and your debt. In this case, we don't have any additional sources other than my down payment and the bank's mortgage. But theoretically, you could start to add in things like seller carrying or mezzanine debt. If you could strike a deal with the owner and say, hey, will you carry $200,000 of down payment at 6% interest only for 2 or 3 years, you can hash out those numbers with the seller and work out a deal you can underwrite that into the deal and see how it'll affect your returns. And if you don't have it, you can, you just turn it off and you don't have to look at it, and it keeps things kind of organized. But that is an option. So in this case, it's a pretty simple breakdown. We'll just say we would bring $332,000 to this deal. We'd get $900,000 in debt. We can change the amount of debt that we get on the dashboard page. But for now, we're just inputting all the data. So we know that we would have to do full renovations on this property if we were going to bring up those rents to, to market value. So what I'll do is I'll underwrite a blanket, and this is obviously not a great way to do it because it's not very precise, but it's fine. It's good enough to get started. We'll do a blanket renovation, or we'll just do a blanket rehab. We'll do it on 8 units, and let's just say we set an interior budget of $8,000 a unit, and that's probably a little bit nice. But if you guys have ever heard of the rule of thumb of using 2,000 or 1,000, it's just not enough. If you're gonna really renovate, I mean, Blake, what's your experience? I mean, it's always more expensive than you think.
Yeah, I mean, mine's been like hurricane damaged homes as well, so those have all been like big rehabs. But I've heard like for the bigger multifamily properties, like you get a little bit of efficiency, and for a light rehab inside, probably around 4,000. So 8,000 on a full rehab on a smaller property, probably 8,000 is good.
Okay, so then what I'll do is I'll basically put here's what I'll do. I'll put $15,000 right here for exterior. Again, a little bit nebulous, but when I drove the property, I saw these really just honestly gross looking concrete pillars outside the property, and I know that if I were to buy it, I would get rid of it, and I'd put something more attractive in, and I guarantee it would automatically boost the value of it. It just would look better, but that would not be, I'm going to factor in for that. So now we got 79,000. We don't really have any reserves, and right now we're at 5,000. I would kind of like more reserves. Each investor has a different percentage relative to in this case, it's relative to the purchase price. You could change this number according to the thing you want to hold it relative to. But the last investor I worked with likes to keep it like 1.5, maybe 2%. But if you don't have any operational reserves at all, that's a dangerous place to be, because in times like this, when cash flows are getting squeezed, that's kind of how you find yourself in a tough spot. So I've seen investors put in ridiculous operational reserves that everyone would sleep better at night if they were able to afford it, but most people just can't. So what I'll do is, in this case, I will top off the difference between $100,000, because it's a nice round number. When you're talking to an investor, hey, we're going to put $100,000 into the property, it just sounds a little bit better. I'll just top off that value in the operational reserves, and I already have 0.42, and we'll see what that brings it to. So that's what, 21,000. That puts it at just over 2%. So maybe it's too much, maybe it's fine, but maybe it's not enough for somebody. But that's where I'd put it. And then we'd fill all these things out accordingly. But right now, our closing costs are $50,000. That's a lot. That's more than it's going to be. So it's probably it's a little excessive, maybe a little overly conservative, but again, for the initial look, it's enough.
Hey, Jake, real quick on that tab, can you speak to like the lender required reserves right now in like these multifamily properties?
Right here?
Yeah, like currently, like right now with everything going on, what they're requiring.
Again, it's a classic it depends answer. If you go with a credit union versus an agency lender, it's going to be a different answer. The size of the deal is going to change it, but I think as a general rule of thumb, most lenders are going to ask for 50%, so 6 months of insurance upfront, and then 100% other way around. They're going to ask for 100% insurance and then 50% taxes upfront, and then the tax value is going to change based off of the purchase price. But the thing about purchasing right now is some, with the opportunity zones and other, tax consultants making a huge blow up in the last couple of years, you can usually fight your tax valuations. which is going to change your lender requirements. So it's a little bit niche. That's something for like a different kind of, that's something for like a tax expert.
Yeah, it's like that's a different topic,
but
it's out there.
but as a rule of thumb, you can account for having to bring 50% of your taxes and 100% of your insurance upfront to closing. Okay, so at this point, we're kind of done putting stuff in. You know, the only other thing that we could put in is change our rent and expense growth rate. And then down the road, if we were going to change our economic losses, this is where we would do it. But the pro forma is going to automatically populate. The pro forma is going to automatically populate with the numbers from the offer basis, and then it's going to grow at the rate that you specify right here, and then your income is going to grow in accordance with your financial analysis and your rent scheduling that you're projected out.
Yeah.
So this thing,
Jake, I'll hit you with another one. Sorry to interrupt. But year one rent growth, are you still projecting that at like a normal 3% with the deals you're currently underwriting? Or are you saying like because of COVID and those effects, like rent growth is going to be less for the next 12 months, 8 months, whatever?
it's tough, man. I don't know. I think if I had a crystal ball, so I know a mortgage broker out of New York who is just absolutely bullish on rent growth. So he thinks that I actually don't know if there's anything that could happen that he thinks would slow the rent growth across the country. It's fascinating because he's not just some crazy dude. He's a really smart guy, and his kind of whole thought process is it's a simple supply and demand issue. There are a ton of renters, and there are not that many places to rent. And so if you can, unless you're planning on raising your rent $400, 30% or 20%, and you're not going to be sustainable anyways, you can just grow at a kind of a predetermined rate, and people will live at your property. And as long as you're underwriting some loss to lease and maybe some vacancy, or some vacancy and maybe some loss to lease, you'll be fine. So that's kind of his idea of it. And then there's other people who think that that we're on the verge of a bubble and there's going to be defaults, and properties are going to have to cut their rents to make payments.
That is the most political answer I've ever heard. So
well, the answer is I don't know.
Slight rent growth. we'll go some slight rent growth. Okay.
So what do I do in San Antonio? I talked to
San Antonio is also a different story. It's probably going to grow. He's
like, dude, he's like, take a walk downtown. He's like, people.
Yeah. So I just something I wanted to hit on, just kind of across the board was the rent growth because
it's not to be political, but it's just like
I'm just yanking your chain, man.
Yeah, you just don't know. You just don't know. I don't know. So, and I'm not. I don't know. If I had a crystal ball, I probably wouldn't be on this podcast. But this is how you do it. So for the most part, if you run the property right, your expense is not going to grow. It's not going to grow faster than your rent, but it's going to grow with inflation. So I like 3 and 2 is kind of where I started at, and then if the bank has an issue with it, I'll change it. But that's kind of what. So again, it's a super busy spreadsheet, but this page is pretty busy, but it's pretty basic. And it grows accurately, which is the most important thing, right? Because as you start to model your liquidity event, your exit of some kind, accurate numbers in this portion are incredibly important because that's what the valuation is going to be based off of. I think this is where most mistakes get made when people make the spreadsheets themselves. As they grow it out, is how do you forecast in the future? So in this case, as you guys can see, we'll start talking about the returns. So it doesn't look like a great deal, believe it or not. The LoopNet deal does not look great. And what we can do is start kind of trying to pinpoint, well, okay, it doesn't work at 1.2 million, but we're happy with where our underwriting is at. So now how can we not just, randomly drop the purchase price to find a number that makes sense, but kind of specifically start to locate where that number, where like the best offer you can come up with sits. So we'll go through that in a second.
Hey, Jake, real quick, when you're looking at that, so you work your way down, like from at the bottom of the spreadsheet, you work your way to the right to get to the returns tab. And I think everybody in here is aware of what IRR is and what it means for the investment. But when you're underwriting, what's that IRR telling you?
So what I like about IRR versus, in particular, the XIRR, what I like about IRR is that it takes into consideration the time value of money, which is not, it's not just about, I put in this much and then at some point in time I make back this much, right? You want to know how long your money's going to be tied up, and um, it's important to take into consideration the time value of money, which is why I incorporate a potential closing date, because that's what the distributions and that's what everything's going to be based off of. But that's why I like the IRRs. I think it gives you a better idea of what the property is going to do for you. But I also like equity multiple. I like payback period. I like knowing, I like knowing how long it would take for this property to pay me back just from cash flow.
Yeah, that's a good point. Are
Do
you
you
ready
ever
to go?
use net present value?
What's that?
Do you ever use net present value too, or not?
Um, I've considered it. So I've played around with using net present value. I haven't had a lot of success with it, to be honest. I think that here's the reason why I think that here's the reason I think I haven't had success with it. I don't know if it's that important to the normal investor, to like the regular investor. It's important to know it's important to be precise, right? But at some point, like I've said, it might be too much, and I think that the difference between an investor getting 15.5% and 15% is sometimes the difference between $100,000 on the purchase price, which you may not buy a deal because of $100,000. Like, it just sounds like too much, but the difference in the return was relatively insignificant. You'd never know the difference on you just wouldn't know the difference. So that's kind of my opinion on it. But again, like I just I'm just one dude who does that. I know other, underwriters. I know some of the bigger underwriters, like New York private equity groups. Those guys are using, spreadsheets that are tens of thousands of dollars for monthly access to, and they come up with every number imaginable. So if you want to know something about the deal, you'll get it. For most people, me included, it's just too much. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. But it is a good question, and that's what I've been trying to balance. So is precision on that. So okay, cool. So I'll go back to this in a minute, but here's what I want to go over now. So basically, we've come to the conclusion that this deal doesn't look great, right? If you just go to the returns tab, you can kind of look through and see you lose money in the first year, and you're really not making very much. You look at your cash return, your average annual return, it's just not great. You never end up getting paid back, right? You're negative all the way through to the end. So let's talk about why. So the kind of feature of my spreadsheet, and this is how I underwrite my deals, because I don't like switching back and forth between pages, is I like to, once I get all my info in, now I can just start kind of finagling the numbers. So I have my return summary right here, right? So my IRR is negative, cash to cash is all bad. So now is when I'll put in kind of my return requirements as an investor. So I like to model my years out with a refinance. So this is normally off, right? I'll turn on my refinance. I like to refinance at like year 4 because I like to sell at year 8. This is kind of the way I like to model it. Certain groups are, we don't want to model a refinance. We'll just do a 7-year hold or a 5-year hold. Others are, we're going to refinance the deal after 5, 6, 7 years. And your spreadsheet only goes out to 10 years. But if we can return all of the risk capital after 6 years, then it doesn't matter how far out the property's, spreadsheet goes, because as long as we get our money back, at the refinance, then it's an unlimited return and your risk is out of the deal and everything's good. So in this case, what we'll do is, just to keep things simple, we'll do 5 years refinance and 10-year resale. Then, as you can see underneath the refinance and the resale, they have different cap rates, right? So my guess is that, cap rates are going to, I think they're going to rise. They've been shrinking for, the last 10 years. And as investors get priced out of larger markets, they're going to move to these secondary and tertiary markets, and it's going to depress the cap rates in those smaller markets. I do think that San Antonio has a lot of room to grow, but I do think that they're going to still see an inflation in those cap rates because there's still a large market. There's a lot of investors. There's competition. So, buying at a 5 cap is probably too much, but I think that maybe 5 years down the road, banks will be willing to refinance at a 6 cap. I think that that's a realistic. I think that's a realistic assumption, and it's hard to know, but that's just what I would put. That's how I'll underwrite it. And then 10 years down the road, it's impossible to know what it's going to do. Luckily, and I'm working on creating a way to kind of dampen the impact of this, but I could theoretically make this deal worth buying at 1.2 million if I change the cap rate to 5%, right? I mean, maybe not 5%, but if I intentionally depress the cap rate in the spreadsheet, then it's going to make the deal look better than it actually is. Eventually, if you start raising money from investors, they will be your protection against putting this number too low, because they'll say, hey, we don't like that number being modeled there. But for the sake of the spreadsheet, we'll just put it at a 6.5, so a half point higher than the refinance, right? And then we're going to refinance. We're going to have a portion of the refinance going to go to the bank, and then when we sell it, there'll be a certain sales cost. I have the mortgage hard coded off of 75% loan to value and 4.5%. Depending on who you get your loan from, that number's going to, these numbers will change. But what I would not put in right now is any interest only. When I first got started in real estate, a lot of people were taking out, these mortgage-backed security loans that were, 48 to 60 months interest only, and they took them out 4 years ago. And like these guys are now taking, they have no principal paid down on their loans, and now they are getting squeezed on their payment. And it's unbelievable what their balance sheets look like right now.
And when you do that too, like you take out like a whole, basically like an income stream from owning real estate, like equity, your debt pay down, build your equity. That's one of the revenue drivers of real estate. So you're essentially eliminating that, especially if you do it over a long term.
It's true, but if you think about the people who are buying those deals, they're managers. They're not, not that they're not real estate investors, but these guys are making 2% salaries off of their portfolio value. That's paid for by the investments of the people in the fund. So as long as the fund, as long as the property's performing, they're getting paid, and they don't really care about the long-term play of it. It's a different business. So that's why I would not recommend people underwrite interest only at the moment, just because of the uncertainty and stuff. But okay, so I think we've hit it all. So at this point, I'm happy with kind of where the underwriting is at. I don't like the purchase price, and so now I need to find a number that the broker's going to want, and I can put in, that the broker is that I want to tell the broker for how much I want to pay him. I'll put in my return hurdles. I'll just leave it like this. If I want a 20% IRR and a double-digit cash-on-cash return, let's just say 10%, an equity multiple over 10 years is what we're modeling of 3, and then a payback period of maybe, 5 years, then these are my new return metrics. What I can do is I can use these buttons to kind of help bring the price down. So I'll click the first one, IRR. So I'll see what purchase price I would need to buy at to get a 20% IRR on the deal. So I set this as the value. This is the new IRR. That's at 584. Based off cash, I could pay up to 660. Equity multiple 650, and based off the payback period 600. So if you kind of, again, putting the data points together and kind of finding a number somewhere in the middle, you kind of start to see 600,000 is kind of where you see a fair purchase price being. If you sent that to a broker, they would say, thank you, never talk to me again. So this would be a deal. You'd probably say, hey, took a look, probably not for us, but appreciate you sending it to me, and we'll talk soon. If, maybe it was a little closer, you could send them an email and say, hey, this is what we came up with. But, this is a perfect LoopNet deal, right? It's literally being valued at twice what it probably should be. And, maybe maybe we're not doing something right? Like I'm being fully transparent. Maybe the expenses were too high. Maybe we're shooting ourselves in the foot by underwriting the expenses too much, or maybe our income, we're not projecting our income correctly. But at this point, I have enough information to know that I probably don't want to pursue it. It's going to be a waste of my time to pursue this deal. And if I'm going to pursue it, the next people who I want to talk to are, the property managers who might manage it. Start trying to fine tune those deals, and sharpen your pencil. And that would be the next step.
A good point in this too, Logan. We talked about this, and you might be able to pitch in here too. If you're getting investor coming back that's saying, hey, you're offering this at 1.2, but I'm getting my numbers back at 600. From your side, when you were a broker a couple years ago, how would you see that relationship like being taken care of the best from that investor? Like, what could they say to you to, like, you still take them seriously and continue sending them deals if they're like, hey, this just doesn't work for me?
I think you hit the nail on the head. If you feel like it's like an insulting number like that, like, don't even, but maybe ask some fact-finding questions on the front end. Like, what if the seller really needs to get out of this deal and something changed and you don't know, right? So ask them on the front end, and if it sounds, it'd be like, hey, I mean, one of my favorite lines that I always would use, or I would hear it, would be like, I don't want to insult you, but we'd be way off on this. And then the broker might dig more and be like, well, like, what's way off? And he'd be like, oh, like a long way is like, you can kind of finesse it a little bit.
Yeah, and kind of soften the blow. I do the
Yeah,
same
and if
thing.
they're like, oh, well, they need this, they need $1 million, that's it. Then you can be like, okay, well, this probably isn't for us. But if they're like, hey, bring me the offer, you can't insult me, like, they're looking at anything, then you say.
And that's a good point, just because keeping the deal flow steady for the brokers is a good point. Analyzing deals and giving them the feedback is part of that. So just wanted to touch on it.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that, by the way. One thing that I've seen before, and I'm sure you've seen them. I didn't know about your background. So that's great. Sellers will take lower offers. Even if they have multiple offers, they'll take the lowest of them. If you are, a certified closer, if somebody really needs to get out of the deal, and the difference for them between two numbers is maybe 1% on their total return, right? They did the numbers, and 15 and 16%, whatever. They'll take the lower number just because they know that you're going to close, and so there's that balance that you got to run, and that is way outside my wheelhouse. A lot of investors have different personalities and do things differently, but for deals that I'm interested in, yeah, I would, over the phone, tell them, hey, like, this is what I came up with. I'm not going to submit an offer because I don't want to insult you, but this is what I came up with. If it's not this one, I'll see you on the next, kind of thing. And it's really,
Yep.
You don't need to tell them you're terrible at your job and I hate you and this,
Send me better deals.
I've really wasted my time with this piece of
Right.
so.
Yeah.
One specific deal that comes to mind that one of the last ones I did, the owner was adamant about bringing it out at just over $4 million. It was like $4,050,000, and we ended up selling that deal at 2.3. So it's like, you never know.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's just make the ask, and maybe not like the hard offer, but like, hey, what's the sell situation? Is this is this flexible? Something like that. Just kind of soften it.
And it's about transparency. It's about honesty. It's about being a good person. Like, you're be a good person. Don't like try and go and screw someone over and try and hide something. It's about being a good person, an honest business person. I think that having a good spreadsheet makes that process that much easier, because if they say, okay, well, why did you come to that number? How did you come to that? You can say, hey, this is how I came to it. This is exactly the process that I went through. And, not many people who are looking at deals and submitting offers are doing it professionally. So if you can, get the leg up by really understanding the numbers and having a carefully calculated purchase offer that you come to, I think generates a lot of, good juju out there with your network. So anyway, so in this case, I think that basically, demonstrates how I would take a look at a deal initially. Obviously, things change as you get closer, but that's kind of the process that I would use. So I appreciate you guys listening. I hope that adds a little bit of value to your night. I hope it wasn't too much rambling.
Yeah, man. Thanks for jumping on and doing this. Does anybody have any questions? I know we kind of covered some stuff as we went, but did anything not get covered that we should ask?
I got 2 questions. The first one is, where do I get that spreadsheet?
Well, I can send you a link actually. So I can send you a link after this, but it is available for purchase. So
Okay.
Yeah. And I think Jake was gonna do for the people that on tonight, like a discount for jumping on. It's super affordable though, cheaper than the SDA, but I think better. I've been using it, and like I wouldn't have even like had it on here if I didn't like really like it and use it, and I found a lot of value out of it. So
I appreciate it. My personal sales pitch to it is this: that I started real estate through underwriting. That's how I've kind of been brought up. I've seen a lot of people lose, like I've seen enough people in 4 years lose their shirts, like in markets that are amazing, where the only way to lose money is by making a silly mistake. And I've seen it happened partially to me. It happened to my dad. It happened to people that I just got tired of seeing it. And I don't want to make a community, I don't want to make an online presence. I basically just want to like make a solid spreadsheet available to people that is going to have accurate numbers and is going to be updated as I improve my own underwriting. Everyone who buys a spreadsheet will also have access to improved underwriting tools. So that's why I'm doing it. That's why, I believe in the product. So if you guys, if you guys are interested in it, I have a discount code for everyone who came to the thing. And is that a Santee
What?
from the are you military?
Yeah, I'm at Eglin.
Nice. Okay. So yeah. So then I have
Air Force guy.
nice. Okay. So yeah, I have an additional code. So I'm trying to help people out. I mean, I'm trying to value my time, but I'm really, I'm trying to get the tool out so people can use it to make smart business deals. This is a great time to be buying real estate. So you should do it smartly. So that's why I'm doing it. So anyways, yes. So it is available for sale. And then you got another question?
Yeah, so I joined the Michael Blanc thing for just a little bit, and then I was moving and just said, okay, let me put that aside for a while. Do you like that program? The appeal to me is the deal desk, the fact that you can bring deals and you can, add the value by bringing the deal, raising some of your own money, doing the due diligence, but then they bring the rest of the money if you don't have the rest, right? Does that seem pretty valuable to you?
I can't speak on it. So it's been 3 years since I was a part of it. And I used to be the guy who sat at the deal desk and analyzed the deals for Michael Blanc. So I love Michael and Drew Niffin. They're great dudes who are they're honest and they have a great thing going for them. I don't know about that program in particular if it's worth. I don't know how much it even costs, so I just can't speak on it.
Okay. Cool.
I think that one too. I think I looked into it. It's gotta be like a super good deal, like really high IRR, like meet pretty strict requirements.
They're syndicators, right? So they have investors. So their investors have hurdles,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So another thing you probably noticed about this sheet does not have syndication metrics on it. This is not a syndicator sheet, and maybe at some point I'll release one. But this sheet is not for syndicators. If you're going to raise, if you're going to split the down payment between 4 guys, you're going to go in on a deal, and it's easy to do that. But it's not for if you're going to have a 7% preferred return and split the return 70-30. It's not. That's not the kind of spreadsheet it is. So it's made for the people who are going to be going out, hustling, trying to buy a 12, 24, 46, 56 unit property and, make it happen. So.
Good spreadsheet though. I like it.
How many deals did you say that you have to underwrite before you get one that you see, Jake?
Oh, I have no idea.
Like 1,000 to 1?
No, it's not 1,000 to 1.
Yeah.
It's classic Air Force answer. It depends. It depends on if you're in a good market or a bad market. you could get any deal you wanted if you were willing to pay enough for it, right? So it's
I'm not hitting like good metrics, right? Like what?
you get like I like you have to be. So this goes back to kind of another thing, and I learned this from the last company I worked for. Basically, you set your reserve and you set your expenses, and then you leave them. You can maybe play with the income, right? You can maybe play with the income, and maybe you can play with some other numbers, but the numbers that you never change to make a deal work are your reserves and your expenses. And so as long as you have your hurdles that you want to hit and you're comfortable, maybe you really love this property, you just think like for some reason it's just like it's in a great part of town, and maybe I'm going to pay a little bit more for it, and maybe it's I'm buying at a more expensive rate, maybe at a 6 cap instead of a 6.5 cap, but because you just like the property so much, you're willing to take the difference. So the answer is it depends because it's personal, but I think that if you create a system, you drastically increase your chances of hitting. So if you have no system and you're just going online and randomly looking at deals in different markets from different brokers, then maybe it could be 1,000 to 1, maybe 5,000, maybe 10,000. Like, I have no idea, but I know that the people who do get deals, and Blake is an example of it. I think my experience is a good example of it. If you make a couple good connections with a couple good people, it should be enough to feed you for life, right? So if you um, if you're able to meet a broker who gives you a deal that you like, and then you buy it, and then you buy another one, and then buy another one, maybe you underwrote 1,000 deals before you met him, but if you get the next 5 deals or 10 deals from him, all of a sudden that ratio is back. So I think it's less about what's the ratio that you can get, and it's more about how systematic are you about your approach to underwriting your deal flow. That's what I would do. That's how I would say it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's kind of why right now I'm focusing on like 2 markets, like Huntsville and Panama City, so that I can like get my systems down, have the property managers in place to like help with due diligence. Like I know Panama City really well. I'm trying to get that way with Huntsville and just focusing so I can narrow down those numbers and just make more educated guesses.
Yep.
You're never gonna have perfect information. That's the inherent risk, but you can definitely narrow that down with your own due diligence.
That's why the back of the napkin investors are so successful. I think that they just accept that there's an inherent lack of, as much as I love the spreadsheet, there's a lot of uncertainty in it, and there's a lot of things that are not, you can't know, right? But if you don't do it, you will lose, and if you do it, you still might lose. So you have to just there's something to just accepting that some of it's out of your control. I think that's why the back of the napkin guys do so well, and that's why brokers like working with them, because the brokers they don't like it when people brokers don't like it when people treat them as just used car salesmen. They want to be valued and know that they do good work in selling properties for fair market values, and they're good brokers between the sellers and the buyers. And the relationships that I've seen other people having between each other is what I aspire to have. And as I get more experience, that's what I hope to get. I don't have it yet, but that's I think where the chosen land is.
Yeah, that's a good point. Before we get off here, I want to be respectful of your guys' time. Any final questions?
I got to run too, but I just want to say, hey, thank you, Jake. Appreciate it. And Blake, thanks for putting this on again.
Yeah, man. Of course. Thanks for showing up. You got the little one there. It's nice to see her get in and get some real estate. Really.
Did you see that stupid video I posted yesterday?
Oh no, I didn't. It was on Facebook.
She's like, yeah, I did a live. She's like pulling up her shirt, pulling shit out of her panties. I'm like, oh my
this
god.
Is when your mom commented on
Yeah.
me. Yeah. And she was like, your daughter's back there. Yeah.
Sorry.
Cool. Yeah, cool, man. Well, I know Jake's kind of like the man behind the curtain. Jake, you want to like share the website or your email with him, or just
yeah. So if you go to www.mogultool.com, so the name of the spreadsheet is Mogul Tool, MOGUL Tool. I don't know, maybe a little gimmicky name. I don't think it's important to become a real estate.
Love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
So it's $100. if you use the code Panhandle at the checkout, it'll give you, I can't remember if it's 10 or 15% off. Maybe 15% off. But, I think it's a super value. And as soon as you purchase property, as soon as you purchase a spreadsheet, you have an hour-long consultation with me where we can talk a little bit more detail about your specific goals and like what you want to use the spreadsheet for to make sure that you get the use out of it that you should. And then, I'll never upsell you on anything. So, if there's a way that we need to make things work for you, we can talk about it, but I'm never going to like push you. So anyways, that's where you can find it, mobiletool.com.
Love it, man. That's integrity first right there. Real Air Force values shining through in the real estate realm.
Excellent.
I love it. Well, guys, we'll wrap it up. Thanks so much for jumping on, Jake. Thank you for the time. Love walking through deals. I could do this stuff all day, but we got other things to do, so we'll hop off.
All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks.
All right, fellas. Have a good night.
See ya.
Have a good one. Thanks, guys.